Yesterday, I noted that Paul confronted two major challenges facing the church in Corinth, one of which was their infatuation with what Greeks called wisdom. Now, based on what he says in 1 Corinthians 1, we could be excused for believing that his rant against wisdom was a rant against intelligence. But as we'll see today, that is not at all what Paul means. He in no way, shape, or form is asking us to be ignorant know-nothings. Instead, he's proposing a different basis for judging truth. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul continues his argument against Greek wisdom. But instead of appealing to irrationalism, or worse, to emotionalism, he appeals to something different, something that is higher than human knowledge. In chapter 1, he called it the foolishness of God, as in, the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. Now in chapter 2, he gives a name to it. He calls it the power of God. He says, "When I came to you, brothers and sisters, I did not come proclaiming the mystery of God to you in lofty words or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ, and Him crucified. And I came to you in weakness and fear and in much trembling. My speech and my proclamation were not with plausible words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might rest not on human wisdom, but on the power of God." This is not an appeal to the irrational, nor is it an appeal to the emotions. It is an appeal to his understanding of the very meaning of the cross itself, which is itself a demonstration of the power of God. Hear what he said? "I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ, and Him crucified." So it bears attending to what the cross means for Paul here. New Testament scholar Richard Hayes calls our attention to the fact that when Paul speaks of the cross here, he doesn't speak about some of the things we ordinarily associate with the crucifixion. There's no reference here to the atoning sacrifice of Christ. He doesn't talk about the blood of Christ and how it is a substitute for our guilt. Nor does he mention forgiveness. These two things are what we most commonly think of when we think of the cross and of the crucifixion. So if atonement and forgiveness are not what Paul has in mind, what does he mean by the cross, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? According to Hayes, Paul's understanding of the cross is more cosmic in nature. The cross is God's decisive act in human history that has changed everything. The cross has put an end to the former age and ushered in a new age. The former age was defined by human sin and all of its attendant problems: warfare, greed, hatred, self-serving. In short, everything that separates us from one another. By contrast, the new age is defined by God's act of setting things right once again. It is about God's act of hitting the proverbial reset button on creation and restoring it to what God intended it to be all along. Notice that in all of this, it is what God does, not what we do, that counts. That should resonate pretty strongly with us in the Reformed tradition. As I often say, in theological terms, every theological statement places God as the subject, God as the one who does things. Everything we have is a gift of God, and everything we do is a response to God. This is what Paul means by the power of God. Human history will never change for the better because of what we do, only by what God does. Because even when we are acting out of our best and highest instincts, we somehow manage to muck things up. The cross is God's decisive act in human history. It represents the power only God possesses to alter the course of human affairs, to repair the damage we have inflicted upon creation by the power of sin. This is why Paul contrasts human wisdom with God's power. It's not wisdom versus irrationalism or emotionalism. It is human wisdom tainted by sin versus the power of God to restore all things. And the cross is the means God has chosen to accomplish this purpose. Tomorrow, Paul changes the terms a bit. Instead of wisdom and power, it becomes spiritual maturity versus quarreling and division. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.